And I'm Clint, and we wanted to thank Exoterra for sponsoring this episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Exoterra is the industry leader in glass terrarium enclosures, and we are a big fan of getting to see the species we work with, both at home and at the university.
We utilize Exoterra caging here at Metazotics, and in addition to top-quality terrariums, Exoterra offers an array of heating options, lighting, supplements, decor, and truthfully anything needed or wanted when keeping reptiles.
Thank you, Exoterra, for supporting Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Man, it makes me think we need to get some sponsors. All right, well, welcome to Reptile Fight Club. Thanks for joining us. My name is Justin Julander. I'm your host this evening. Along with me, my co-host, Rob Stone. How's it going?
It's going great.
Good.
Gotta love it.
Yeah. Well, things
Where's
are.
our Buttons powerlifting gloves commercial? That's what
I know.
I need to know.
That's what we need to get the sponsors for our podcast going. Mutton powerlifting gloves. I think we had a short sponsorship by. What are those?
Oh, the chews,
Gushers.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Chuck got the Gushers, folks, but when he left, they left with him. So yeah, no more Gusher money. Darn it. Well, yeah.
Always the
Here we
check.
are. Not as cool as Colubrid and Colubroid Radio with their intro video. I listened to a couple of their episodes. It was, they do a good job. Go listen to
I like
them.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Those guys are great. It was fun to herp with them in California as well. So got to know them a little better, but yeah, good people. Yeah, well,
Right.
back
Speaking
from
of herping and traveling,
Herpifest. Yeah.
I had travel, but not for herping. New York City, the urban New York City. That was interesting.
New York City.
Yeah, those old Pace commercials. I kept thinking about it. But yeah, kind of first time properly in the city. That was interesting. Put in context to a lot of the terms and names that we hear culturally. Right, it's so ubiquitous within our culture that getting a much greater appreciation for what those things mean and what that looks like and all that. Frankly, it was struck as very safe, easy to get around, wasn't problematic, kind of village mouse goes to the city, but it, still turned out all right for us. So yeah, it was all good, but no reptiles turned up in Central Park.
Oh, that's a bummer. Yeah, I was going to ask if you got to herp Central Park.
Well, we went to Central Park, but
no red-eared sliders in the ponds.
Not that I saw. I'm sure they're there.
Yeah, right. Hey, where can you go without seeing a red-eared slider, right? So we went out to Texas to the Texas Carpet Fest. So Michael did a good job putting that on, and it was a really well attended. There were probably 100 people there, but of course I went a little early to get some herping in, and Jordan Parrott was nice enough to pick me up from the airport, and which incidentally I found out that he had driven about I think a 10 and a half hour drive to go herp West Texas, meet up with Casey Lazick and Jeff out there. So, Casey and Jeff were making their way across like Arizona and into Texas. And so Jordan drove out there for basically 2 nights of herping and then drove back to pick me up. And so he'd driven like 2,000 miles just in, a couple, like 48 hours or less. And then we turned around and drove back west again. And so it was kind of crazy, but I was really appreciative of him, and he's pretty good at driving and staying awake and doing the miles. So, really nice of him to make that happen and kind of cart me around. Of course, we did the obligatory stop at Buc-ee's and got to experience the whole Texas Buc-ee's thing, which is pretty impressive. It was pretty good stuff, and got some good food and some jerky and other supplies for the trip. They had a pretty poor selection of Diet Dr. Pepper, unfortunately, but what do you do? So, we made our way west, went out looking on the cuts for whatever we could find there. Of course, probably not the best time of year for herping in general and specifically for like gray bands. Alterna usually are more a springtime animal rather than, I mean, it's possible we could have found something, but, and we thought it was just going to be me and Jordan, but then, Casey and Jeff said, "Hey, we're going to come out and join you." So it was really cool to, herp with Casey and to meet Jeff. He's a great guy, really nice guy. So, herping with them was a treat. We spent more time like just turning off the headlamps and chatting and looking at stars and, swapping stories and stuff. So
especially a little bit out of season, right?
Yeah.
Where you weren't necessarily thinking, this is going to be great. You still turned some stuff up though.
Yeah. So we were walking the cuts and, lots of cool spiders, and Jordan's really into spiders lately. He has a pet spider at one of the cuts where it's under the same rock every time he goes there. So he's, he refers to it as his, pet spider, and it's pretty cool. And it was there under the rock, both
awesome
there. So pretty crazy. So we walked the cuts and there were these little, now I got to look up the name, but there are these little cactus and they almost look like rocks. Like I think they're called button cactus. Some of them were fruiting. So that was kind of cool. They had these little red filaments that kind of came out of the middle of them, but just looked like a rock with some red, something stuck to it. Really crazy. Like I wouldn't even have, like we walked through there and I didn't notice them. And so, and he was telling me about, there's these little button cactus, and like, I'm like, I don't think I've seen those, and then he said, we got to the end of the cut and he's like, let me show you these cactus. And so we walk over and, we're looking at the cacti, and then all of a sudden he's like, a lepidus. And there was a mottled rock rattlesnake crawling through the button cactus, so it's a good thing we went back to see the cactus or we would have missed the rattlesnake.
Yeah, absolutely. So was that on the top of the cut?
Events, but that was down near the road, like maybe
near the road.
Yeah. Okay. Just off the road. So it was heading up, up into the cut or whatever. And we didn't see it on the road, but that's, we weren't staring at the road too often. So, and it's kind of funny because we were just talking, in that area. So it could have crawled right behind us and we wouldn't have known any better, So it was fortunate that we have other interests other than reptiles, and, looking at cactus was something we did because otherwise we probably would have missed it. And it was kind of interesting because I did that thing where, we took photographs and everything. And then I walked away, and then I think somebody had like, I think I left the hook there. So I went back and the hook wasn't there, but I was like, maybe I'll try to see if I can find that rattlesnake again. I looked last place I saw it and all around, and I could not locate it. It was just, undercover somewhere or just kind of dipped. So it's kind of funny, if you really do need to just time it right where they're out on the crawl and you're in the right spot and they're in the right spot, or else you just might not see it. So it's kind of cool. So we did that night and stayed out, for quite a while. It was a really nice time till we were all pretty tired, and obviously poor Jordan, he'd been driving so much, so he was understandably beat, but he was probably wanting to stay out more. He's like, it was kind of that torn between hanging out and chatting and like, hey, we should be walking the cuts more or something. Let's talk while we walk or something. But he was, we all just kind of let it happen as it happened. And saw a few more. I was
thinking from his pictures, I was wondering if maybe that was where your story was going around the cactus, because I think in his picture, especially, you can kind of see what you were describing of like a small cactus with a red filament type flower. I was thinking, I wonder if this is where he's going with this. That's great. Exactly.
Yeah. So you'll see it in Jordan's photos. I've got a couple photos with it in the background or in the foreground as well. And seriously, like you kind of have to pay attention to see that it's a cactus and not a rock in some, at least the ones that don't have the fruits on them, but it was kind of cool, really mini cactus, and then if you look really close, like if you zoom in, you can see their little interlocking spines and stuff, I don't think if you touched them, I think they were rigid spines because I touched one. It didn't like poke me or anything, but you could feel like the rigid spines. Yeah. So kind of cool. There were a lot of neat cacti there in that area too, I guess that's just Texas has some cool stuff. So we went and, the next morning we went out looking for indigos, and it had rained a little bit and the sun was out, so it was like great conditions for looking for indigos.
And as we get more into fall and winter, right, that's more the time that they're active as big dark snakes, right? They have to you see them less in the summer because they're so, presumably, either if they're up and active, then they're just so quick to do what they need to do, and then they're back on the ground.
Exactly. Yeah. So winter's probably the better time to find them. It's just like, that's the only thing you're really going to be finding is those guys. And they're still a challenge to,
absolutely
see. And
I still haven't seen any of them. So
right.
Am I jealous?
Well, I don't know, it's one of those things, but, we were going along and Jordan spotted this giant, it looked like a python had crossed the road. He took a picture of me next to it because actually he'd seen a very similar site, in pretty much the same spot, many years ago with his brother. So he has a picture of his brother standing next to the tracks. And so now he's got one of me standing next to these huge tracks. So it was pretty cool. And he spotted another one that was good size. So they were on the move. They were moving around. And it couldn't have been, I guess it could have been maybe a large atrox, but it wasn't, the rectilinear straight line. It was kind of a colubrid, but serpentine motion more so. So that was cool to see. And on the way to the spot, we passed by and there was a DOR and it was about, 6 or 7 foot long. Just big old head, big old snake. It was unfortunate that it was dead, but we kind of got a up close look, and it's hard to get that when they're alive. So, we, drove some roads and just kind of did some road cruising and saw some lizards. Lizards were moving across the road. We didn't stop in time very well. And there's actually some, a rare lizard out there that, I would have liked to have seen, but we were like kind of indigo focused, thinking we're just going to see one at any time. And after a while, Jordan got to thinking like, sometimes you find them just by when you're sitting still, because you'll look in the rearview mirror and you'll see one crossing the road behind you. It's not like going fast is going to ensure that you see one more so than staying still. So, but anyway, we were cruising along and we came up kind of on this area and there was this, pattern on the road and Jordan's like, how is that not an indigo or how is that not a snake? And we come up a little closer and it starts to move and you can see the scales and he's like, it is one, so we jump out of the car and run down, but it was like really thick grass and it went down kind of steep into a wash. And so I could hear it and I was trying to track it but it was gone. So we got a glimpse at it. Yeah, we got it was nothing else it really could have been, but it was definitely a younger indigo. It wasn't a huge one. It was kind of a medium size, smaller one. Still, I guess we only saw the back half of it. So, who knows how big it was and didn't get long enough view to kind of figure out how big this thing was. But, cool to, I guess, add a new species, although you want to get pictures, you want to, have something to show for your find, but I guess seeing one is better than not seeing one. I guess your Florida.
For my first coral snake.
Your first coral snake would speak to that. Yeah.
Although at least you have Jordan there too,
Right. Yeah. To confirm it. Yeah. But not that we're doubting you, Rob, of course. Yeah. It was interesting too, being in Texas, we see, you drive along, you look over and you're like, what is that? That's some sort of antelope, it's like this. We saw a black buck, really nice looking male and a bunch of females with him, and saw some other kind of unique or what's the word? Non-native.
Non-native game animals.
Whatever. Yeah. And Jordan said sometimes you'll be cruising out there and you'll do a U-turn and your lights will hit like a water buffalo or like a zebra or something, just all sorts of crazy stuff out there on the ranches. So I guess they're making money. And then another really cool cactus that he introduced me to is called the horse crippler. It's like almost like a landmine. It's got some pretty good sized spines, but they're pretty sparse. So it's just this, like just below the surface of the, the dirt, and it's got these big spines sticking out of it. So I think, yeah, I don't know why. I don't know if horses have actually been crippled by it. I could imagine they would just smash those, but that's the name of it. Kind of a graphic name, but yeah, the horse crippler. So, we walked a few more cuts, found some shed skins. Like there was, one was obviously from some sort of, whip snake or
sure.
Coach whip. The other one looked to be like a bull snake, had some patterning to it and kind of the, more keeled scales. But, so yeah, snakes were in the area. We just didn't get to see them at that time. And of course the fun, peds on the cuts.
Peds on the pod, peds on the cuts.
Some cool scorpions, other spiders. Really neat. We saw some of the North American huntsman spiders. So that was kind of cool. I didn't know there were huntsmans in the US. So really, really neat. And Jordan's kind of getting into that, and he's made like several range extensions for different spider species. And he's like, some they can only get to like the family level, like you're the genus, you don't even know what species it is, let alone even some they don't know the genus on. So it's like, that's something in this family, but that's about as far as you can go without like microscopy and, like looking at the hairs on the belly or something weird like that. So kind of cool.
We had talked about that a lot on the Arizona, New Mexico trip, kind of him, what he's doing there, and just, it's really interesting, right, relative to reptiles or birds in terms of the lack of kind of scientific, how much, more there is to learn, right? As opposed to in reptiles, for the most part, we're arguing, it's politics around known entities with, few and far between, unless we're talking limestone karsts in Southeast Asia that always seem to hold new species that, it's more about the dynamics of how we're parsing what exists as opposed to, hey, he's in this space where it's, this thing could be entirely new. No one has ever described what it is that we're looking at right now.
Exactly.
Which is kind of wild.
And it was kind of funny because I think Jordan was telling me a story about how when he started getting into it, he's like found one. He's like, oh, wow, this is crazy. This has never been documented from this area. And then he goes back and he finds pictures of the same species from, years past that he logged into INAT. He's like, oh, I guess they were here and I found them.
Found by me.
Yeah. Kind of crazy. So, that idea of, I guess that's why it's kind of appealing in that way. It's kind of the frontier, not a lot is known and the range hasn't really been well delineated. And so kind of cool.
And so much variability and, diversity, right? Within those groups too, as part of it.
Yeah. I mean, lots of different species, it's kind of crazy. So, after we did the indigo searching and found our indigo, we, kind of as the weather, Jordan was keeping his eye on the weather. So we were going to head further north, but it wasn't looking good. So that's kind of why we stayed in this area after we went back to the same cuts that we did the night previous. And so we walked the cuts, saw, a couple cool things. For some reason, there was so much traffic on that road and everybody kept honking at us. We're like, what is going on? And so finally, like we were going to go down to some of the lower cuts. And it like started blowing really hard, a couple of raindrops. And Jordan's like, I kind of know how these, storms go. So maybe let's get close to the car. He's like, I don't want to get my camera wet, so we start walking back to the car and then just the heavens opened and the deluge came down and, we started driving and like you couldn't see more than 5 feet in front of the car. Like sometimes you couldn't even see the white line. Like it was that. And it was just kind of, the wind was blowing sideways, like 80 miles an hour. And, it was like, cyclone winds or what? Intense. Hurricane winds kind of thing.
That's crazy.
But still people would like come up right on our bumper and like pass us. And you're like, what are you doing? And what are you in such a rush to go, So, it was ridiculous. And it just the rain just was insane. And so we're like, well, I guess we're done for the night. And so we went back into town, got a room again. And then, just kind of hung out and, talk snakes and not much else you could do. And then in the middle of the night, we get woken up and it sounds like a brick is like hitting the hotel roof, and you just hear this loud thumping, and then all of a sudden car alarms start going off, and it's like these giant hailstones. So we went out the next morning and Jordan's like, I'm afraid to see, I don't want to see how much damage there is. Yeah. But I think he had like 2 or maybe 3 dents, it wasn't too terrible, and they weren't in the worst spots, and they weren't very deep, but all the cars in the parking lot had at least a couple different dents, and some fared better than others. But man, it was just insane weather, so woke up that next morning, and that was the day of Carpet Fest. And so of course we wanted to go get a little more herping, maybe try to see a bigger indigo this time. And so we start cruising the roads, and like the sun comes out, and it's just a very nice day, like perfect, with all the rain and cold. Maybe thought this will bring them out. So, but the rains had also brought a lot of debris. So like, everything was kind of trash. There's mud and, puddles of water everywhere. But, so we were driving along, and we see this, falcon or some sort of, looked like some sort of falcon, or, like a Cooper's hawk or something. And it was flying kind of low along the road, and then it would like dip into the tree line that was lining the road and like try to grab a bird or something. So we're kind of following it, trying to ID it or see if we could figure out what it was. And then it went to the other side of the road and was flying, and then it went into the trees, and then it didn't come out. So we're like, oh, maybe it got something. So we walk over and we're trying to find it. We didn't find it, but saw some new species of woodpecker that I hadn't seen, the golden fronted woodpecker. So, I added a couple new bird species on the trip. Driving along still, a few lizards. We saw a garter snake, checkered garter. Marcy Zanus. What's the name?
Marcianus. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely smelled like Marcy Zanus, but it was just sat there in the road. We got pictures of it in situ. It was just kind of doing the little twig thing where it's, kind of curved up on itself. Got a horn lizard. Saw a big old DOR Atrox on the way out, but unfortunately no indigos that day. So we drove out, and it was a bit of a drive from where we were. So I think we got there like maybe like 5:30 or something. So the party had started, and, we were kind of late to the party a little bit. And then we were kind of focused on getting things set up and checking out Reptilandia and stuff. So I talked with Eric and Owen for a bit, and we took a picture with like some of the old MP Morelia Python Forum crew. I saw the picture. I was wondering. So what, it was Eric Owen, Balin, Mike Pinnell, and Sean Christian.
That's who I thought it was. Okay.
Yeah. So there were the 6 of us there. Yeah. It's pretty cool to think about that. I mean, it's our 30-year reunion, just about, like back in the late 90s, I think was kind of when, am I exaggerating that, or was that when the forums were?
I mean, it was up. I would say it was still doing a lot of activity through at least 05, 06. Yeah. It was still pretty heavy. So at least 20 years, 20, 25, 30 years, depending on,
Yeah, when we all kind of chimed in or stopped in there. But yeah, good times, So kind of crazy to think about how much time has gone by, and so it was really fun to see those guys, visit with some of the other folks. I got to meet Brett Bender in person, and a bunch, several people who've been on the podcast, and, so it was really a cool gathering.
That's very cool.
One of the cool interactions was, this younger guy, his name's Kip, and he's, like maybe 12, 13, somewhere around there, and with his mom, and she was, they just got him his first carpet python. So kind of cool. So fun stuff. He was, they had me sign, they had my couple of my books. So they had me sign those for them. And so, yeah, it was fun to meet Kip and his mom and to visit with them a little bit, just see that excitement, cause
for sure.
I just saw myself reflected in him, it's pretty cool. And what a good mom to encourage him. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. So that was fun. And then, Jordan and I, put on Reptilandia was really cool, really fantastic, just great, displays and all sorts of cool setups. And so it was really fun. I feel bad that I didn't get to, walk around thoroughly. And,
sure.
Ketzel was, he's kind of the guy in charge there and has set that up and done a really good job with it. And he's like, we were talking about it. And he's like, I've got some, children's pythons. And we were just chatting about children's. And he's like, come check them out. So we walk in there and check out the children's pythons. I'm like, those look like Ryan Young's. He's like, yeah, that's where they came from. I'm like, oh, wow. I guess I, have been doing this a little while where I can kind of guess the breeder they came from, but fun stuff. And he's like, yeah, they're locking up. I'm like, yeah, this is when they, lock up. So, and then Jordan and I gave the talk. It worked out pretty well. It's, despite a few challenges, but yeah, Jordan projected it up on the side of Reptilandia. So it's like on the building. So
that's wild.
It worked out really well. It's just this huge projection up there, and the projector you had did a really good job of, so it was, you could see it pretty well, and the words were legible and the photos were visible and stuff. So it was pretty cool. We just kind of tag teamed and talked about the different experiences we've had with different trips and different species. So it was really fun. And then I was really lucky or glad that Jordan let me kind of join in on the talk because he could have easily have given the talk. Sure. And but that was really nice of him to get me looped in and have me come out there for that. So that was really cool. Very cool. So that was a great night, and the talk was done, and I made a few new poster versions of my poster.
Right, you were working on it beforehand.
Yeah, so there was a couple drawings on the previous carpet python poster that I wasn't very happy with. I didn't like the inland or the gammon ranges, and since Jordan had found a gammons, he had a reference photo that I used to draw a new one that turned out much better than the old one. And then another inland that I just based off one of my captives because I haven't seen them in the wild yet. So, but yeah, I was much happier with the new drawings. And so I did a different layout. I made the size like more poster size, traditional or typical poster size. So
easier to frame and deal with. Yeah,
exactly. Not some weird, random shape that I just kind of went with, So, and I think they turned out pretty well. I need to send you one.
Cool. And people were excited about. Obviously, you were going to bring some to give away or sell or whatever, right?
Yeah. I was selling a couple of them and had some of the old ones that I was selling, just for just a bit, but then people just came up and started grabbing them by the hand, just like a mass rush, and then they were gone. And I'm like, okay. And then it started to sprinkle a little bit. So I'm like, quick, everybody into the, to the back room of Reptilandia. And Jordan had brought a case of books. And so, that we'd gotten on the trip to Arizona. So he took a case of books and I took a case of books. And so, so I was selling a few books and the posters, and then Robert Moss from Moss Family Reptiles. He was there. He bought he's like, I'll just buy the rest of your books so you don't have to worry about them. I'm like, oh, that's nice of you. Yeah. Jordan's like, can I get one of them? I'm like, Robert's like, yeah, you can take one. And so, but yeah, it was really just a great interaction, and Robert's a fun guy. He was pretty entertaining, but yeah, good conversations with a lot of people and really fun to put some faces to names and meet people in person. So just a overall great trip. There were about 100+ people there. So, Yeah, it was really well attended and just a fun event in a great spot. I mean, Reptilandia was amazing and just really cool. So
yeah, how would you describe it relative to? So I know on the last trip, right, you had headed back out before we had the folks over, but you were there for one of the big year Carpet Fest at Eric's house. How does the different context of being at Reptilandia did it make it a little bit less kind of wild and crazy? Was that still a thing, or is it, how did that impact the experience? How do Texans do it compared to Northeasterners and all that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to compete with the OG. Eric puts on a good thing. I think having it somewhere else, not at your own house, probably takes a lot of the pressure off. I'm sure, if Eric had it somewhere else, it would be a lot less work and effort and stressful. Yeah. Then he doesn't have to worry about different things, people going in the wrong places or, messing stuff up or something, but jumping off his roof, things like that. So yeah, there was no wheelering going on, although Brandon Wheeler was there. So he could have wheelered in some way, I guess. But it was good to see Brandon as well. But I think that's probably the biggest difference, is that it was somewhere else. And then, having a talk and things like that. And, they weren't sure how that was going to work, and so it was kind of a see what happens as you go kind of thing. But a lot of people stayed, and I mean, we spoke for probably a couple hours. It was it was kind of a long talk. We talked about all our trips to Australia, so it's hard to make that quick and short.
Sure.
So.
And it wouldn't be interesting, if you didn't. Right. That's the thing. You have to do it in that way. That's another picture.
Yeah. So it was really, it was kind of different in that way. But I mean, just hanging out with, people you've known in the, over the internet or something like that. And I mean, that's kind of the best part about the Carpet Fest, and wherever you're having one, is just getting together with different people with the same interests as yourself. So that was great. So I think Eric and Owen, they should be commended for kind of starting that ball rolling and doing this cool thing. And a little different, but basically the same, and having Eric and Owen there was kind of made it even
that was really great. More so, that they made it out.
Yeah, that was really cool. I don't feel like I got to talk to Owen very much. He kind of, I don't know. I guess he was busy talking to more important people than myself.
Hanging with a different crowd, huh?
Yeah. But it was great they came out. That was really neat. And I was surprised. I didn't realize Jason Balin was coming out, or I guess Sean lives in Texas, so that, it's not as
easy enough,
far of a stretch for him. But cool that Mike Pennell was there. It's good. Always good catching up with him too. Yeah. The shirt they did was really cool too. The Texas Carpet Fest shirt.
I don't know that I saw it. What does it look like?
It's got a just really nice looking carpet. I think I'm trying to think if it's a more for just a kind of graphical representation of a cool looking carpet. And then it's just got Texas Carpet Fest over top, but just colorful, lots of yellows, whites, that kind of thing. So pretty cool. And hard to beat Reptilandia for a venue. That's kind of neat. Neat to have it there, and nice of Quetzal and Ari and Ryu to let us have it there. So pretty fun.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. We were the last ones to leave the parking lot, Jordan and I. Everybody else had kind of left, and after I guess we kind of closed it down. And the next morning, so we stayed kind of close to that area that night and didn't really go out herping anything. It was kind of, overcast, a little bit of rain here and there. So we're like, we were both kind of beat from the long day and then the talk. And, that, I guess, sometimes those social interactions are kind of make you a little more tired than herping. Yeah, exactly. So the next day we went out looking for Scaloporus cyanogenus, something like that, the blue spiny lizard, something like that. really cool little species. They're not sure if they're native there or if they've been introduced. They have been introduced into areas of Dallas, I think, so there's some populations that pet stores kind of released, but they're mainly a Mexican species that kind of come up to the border. So you can find them in Texas. And so that's why it's like, were they here before or not?
Sure. Are they relic populations, or are they introduced? Yeah. Or are they not? Yeah. What's the deal? Yeah.
Yeah. So we pull into this park where they're known to be found. And so we're chatting with the ranger guy that's there at the booth, taking our money or whatever. And man, that guy could not be less interested in anything that had to do with his job. We're like, oh, we're, interested in this. He's like, yeah, there's some rare bird here, but I don't know. I don't really care. Like, okay. Like, maybe have a little more excitement for what you're doing here. I mean, he was really friendly and happy and excited to talk to people, but just like, oh yeah, there's supposed to be some weird snake, but who cares? Like just that attitude was kind of funny. It was a really interesting contrast. So while Jordan was talking to him, I look over at the building across the way, and there's one right there, a blue spiny lizard just sitting on the side of the building. And so, of course, I, get out of the car and try to get photos of it. And they were very shy and skittish. As soon as they knew you were looking at them, they were dipping under things. So I walked around to the other side of the building. There were like 5 or 6 on the walls, and they just all started scrambling. Like one dropped and landed on the pavement and just shot underneath the building. And I'm like, well, I found them. They're around here. So we just parked next to the booth and walked around these buildings and, saw a few more and kind of waited them out until they kind of came back out into the sunlight and got some photos. But really beautiful species. I didn't see a lot of blue on them, so it's weird that they're called the blue spiny lizard, but a lot of yellow, a lot of orangey kind of. So really a pretty lizard, though. I guess they had some blue, but not as noticeable as the other colors, it seemed. So we thought, well, let's go see him in more natural setting. And so we went out to this area where there was a lake, and, the guy's like, oh, if you want to cliff jump, here's some good spots. We're like, oh, I guess there's cliff jumping. So we weren't interested in cliff. I mean, I would have cliff jumped, but I didn't have a swimming suit. I'd love to do that. They had like a rope ladder, so you could get out of there, but it was probably a 20-foot jump or maybe more. It was pretty good height there. And, so we're checking out the lizards. We found a couple, and of course, they're scattering, and Jordan watched one just run and jump off the cliff and land in the water and then swim and get back up on the rock.
That's pretty great.
They're cliff jumping to avoid people taking their picture. It's just really kind of crazy. So
that's wild.
We just walked along the edge, trying to get pictures of them in the rocky, and there were a couple that kind of posed and set up shop
did
first.
Well enough.
Yeah.
Which camera did you bring? Did you bring
I brought my brother's, yeah. And so, it was kind of fun. So I got some pretty decent shots of the lep and a couple of the cornuta, the horned lizard, and I got some shots. Jordan let me borrow one of his lenses too. He gave me his 200 lens. So it's a Canon lens, really nice lens. So I was using that to get a couple more shots. I wasn't, I didn't get the best pictures, but I don't know if it was a matter of, using a new lens or not, not knowing how to work the camera properly. Sure. So, yeah, but, so then we started driving, and Robert, Jordan's buddy, was with us. I've heard a lot of stories about Robert. He's like the man, just a really great
in the
herper.
Same sense, right? We were hearing in Arizona, New Mexico, right? About super nice guy and all. So that's good.
So it was really cool to meet him, and went and got some lunch, and before we went out looking for the lizards. But we were driving along, he spotted a rough green snake just sitting in the crook of a tree, and so we get out and we're taking pictures of that, and just kind of sat there, let us take pictures. And I reached up and kind of picked it up and held it for a bit and put it back in the tree, and we went on our way. But so another lifer for me. So several lifers on this trip, including the lizards and
right.
And
that lep, good to get you.
Yeah.
On the board for that.
Three different, in the speaking in terms of the competition.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got 5 more U.S. crotalus to find, I think, or no. Yeah. 5 more, right? 27 forms of
27
U.S. crotalus. So gaining on you a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
I think, does Dustin still have me by 1, or we're about even, but
you're close, maybe across the combo, right, out of 34. Right. Certainly you guys are close. So.
Yeah. And I was thinking maybe I'd get, but just probably the wrong time of year, but I thought maybe Jordan has some spots for cane breaks and for Massasaugas and pygmies and all sorts of stuff. So we did go out looking later on, but didn't have any luck there. So after we hunted lizards, we went down to Jordan's place and went and herped his backyard.
Right, which sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was incredible. And we did a little bit of herping on the way back too, and like I said, looking for the other rattlesnakes and stuff. But just kind of cold and nothing moving really. Sure. So went down and, his backyard had a couple different frogs. I don't think I'd seen a Gulf Coast toad that I could recall. So, and then there were 2 species of frog, the southern leopard frog and, some kind of little random frog. I can't remember the name of it right now, but,
Jeffy frog.
Yeah, I think I logged in an INAT, so I just need to check there, but didn't think about that before I started talking about it, one of those things. But then the next day was the day I was flying out, so we just kind of hung out at his place. He showed me his collection. Oh, my goodness, just very enviable collection and sure. Just some great animals and great setups. Like I was really impressed with the way he had it set up and just really clean and cool and lots of cool stuff. So
everything I would anticipate, right?
Yeah, exactly. What you would expect of Jordan. So then we went out herping his yard again in the daytime, and he has this pond in his backyard and a bunch of turtles in the pond. I didn't have my Nikon, so I couldn't zoom in and identify them, but I took a couple, distance shots. I don't know if I'll be able to get an idea out of it, but could have been a new species there waiting for me as well. But we walked over kind of by this little creek that drained out of the pond, and we were walking along there and just kind of chatting and stuff. And then all of a sudden Jordan's like, "Oh, there's a snake." And there was this dark snake kind of coiled up, and he's like, "Yeah, it could be a hognose because the hognoses are really dark here." I'm like, "Oh, hognose," And he's like, "It could be a banded water snake, or it could be a cottonmouth." And I'm like, "Well, I think because I've seen the Florida cottonmouth, but I hadn't seen the cottonmouth
sure.
in Texas." So he's like, "Any of those would be great. It would be kind of a lifer for me. I'm pretty sure." So. I went over there with anticipation, and I kind of went down and I couldn't see its head, right? So it was kind of down in the hole. And so all of a sudden it just started. So I was trying to get closer, and it just started to go down the hole. So I jumped down there, grabbed its tail and pulled it out. And sure enough, it was a cottonmouth. I'm like, "Oh, well, it's a cottonmouth." So I kind of laid it down on the bank and then it dipped down into a burrow, that same hole that was kind of pointed down in the first place. So, yeah. Did you catch all that? Did you hear all the story? Or
I think I heard most of it. So okay. Hopefully it comes through.
Hopefully it recorded.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had a little technical glitch there. But so yeah, that was kind of the icing on the cake. Fun to meet Jordan's family, his son and daughter, wife. They were great, really great people. And we did some lunch with his wife, and then he took me out to the airport. Made a special trip to Buc-ee's because I didn't think to grab some gifts for wife and kids. And Buc-ee's is a great place for that because they're all into Buc-ee's. So okay. Especially Ashley living there, she was like, "Oh, you got to go to Buc-ee's. You got to." And so we went to Buc-ee's 3 or 4 times, and gas there's like $2.30, something like that. $2.20. Wow. It's ridiculous. So I'm like, man, what would it be like to live down, have such cheap gas? So just a great trip, and the flight in, the flight home, neither of them were delayed. Neither of them had any issues. So it was, pretty smooth sailing.
Beautiful all around, huh?
Yeah. Green lights all the way home from the Salt Lake airport. So I can't complain. Yeah. So
That's
great
great.
trip. Yeah. It was a lot of fun, but yeah, I mean, I just can't speak of how, speak too highly of Jordan, and, just a great guy. And, gave me a new wardrobe, camera lens, publication on Aspidites, taxonomy from back in the 80s or something. It was just great time. So fun stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I can't wait to get back. I think
Great.
I've kind of changed my tune on herping the cuts, so I might be willing to go do that again at some point. I still,
Right. Well,
I
those are
would.
different cuts than what we've
Right.
done before. That's
Right.
kind of
That's
the
true.
far eastern side.
Yeah.
On the last trip where it was Phil and I, we'd gone out east, but not that we were further north from that.
Mhm.
But kind of getting into some of that similar habitat, and you see different things and sort of what the focal point is. I think there's some more, a greater abundance of life in some of those eastern cuts. It's wetter, and so in general, I think maybe they're a little bit more productive. It seems like it's easier to find Alterna, certainly in the eastern populations than it is in the western population. So again, maybe we've been playing on unnecessarily hard mode, not least our own sort of the skill or lack thereof that we're bringing to the party. But I think we've been trying at the harder end and things too. So maybe there's something to that. And plus all those different species, right? All the things you were mentioning, I was like, wow, you really could have done even more damage than you did to the list and the challenge if you'd been cleaning up some of those things. So
Exactly.
we'll have to figure out how to make it work. If Jordan will have me as well, we'll certainly can do some damage out that way in terms of finding new things and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, it'd be a really cool trip. And, having somebody that's so familiar, knows, seen a lot of that stuff over and over again, and has hunted there pretty much every year for the last 30 years, it's like, he's just got stories about finding all sorts of stuff. And, it's really fun to listen to his stories in general, let alone the stuff, just so experienced. So, I think, I've changed my tune a little bit, cause I was kind of, herping the cuts kind of sucks. And he's like, no, wait, this is like before people realized herping the cuts was an effective way to find Alterna. Nobody was finding Alterna. Very few people were finding Alterna, because they were out looking for them on private land or in national parks. And he's like, once people kind of figured out the cuts, that's the easy place to find Alterna. Otherwise, they're very, very difficult to find. So be happy for the cuts and enjoy the cuts, because that's your best bet at finding stuff. So I've kind of changed my tune a little bit. I won't grumble so much about the cuts.
I think, it just comes down to if you're, the power company, and having, if you're confident in what you're doing because of, the lived experience of saying, nope, we're doing it right. That with the very first time we went, right. It's, especially that one spot, again, further over to the west where, there's park benches and all that. And it just seems like, it almost seems ridiculous. It's like, are we even doing this right? Or are we misimagining what this whole thing entails? When you see nothing and you're not with someone who's an expert in it, it can
make you second guess your research or what you're thinking. Yeah. That's kind of the other trick too, is, having somebody with that experience just makes it, all that easier. Although I will say, when you hear about all the successful trips, you don't hear very much about like, oh yeah, we came here many times and didn't see anything.
Sure. And didn't see stuff. Yeah.
But, that's, I guess, just part of it too. You're not going to talk about the boring times. You're going to talk about the fun, exciting times. And I think too, Jordan has been very successful. Like I think there's very few trips where he hasn't seen something good, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially having a diversity of interests, certainly that's something we've seen, right? The more broad your interest, the less likely it is you'll get skunked because something will be out. Heck, if you could find, millipedes fascinating, then every trip's a guaranteed success or whatever.
Right.
So there's some of that too. And then if he's out there, you have the pro with you, then you're less likely to wind up in a spot where you think we're just missing it. It's our own.
Right.
That was thoughts in the Arizona, New Mexico route, particular roads and things where it's going, well, he's right here with us, has found plenty of X, Y, or Z here, and we're not turning him up. Well, he's here with us, and we're doing what he would do, and we're still not turning him up. So I don't think we're missing him. It's just not today.
Right. So, yeah. And there's also some things that, he hasn't seen and looked for very intensely. Sure. And, same kind of thing where it's like, this is kind of that white whale type thing. So it's nice to have those shared experiences as well.
Absolutely.
So I don't feel bad about not finding some, knowing people have put in such great effort and haven't seen them. So that's the way it goes. But yeah, well, how about we do a little fighting? You ready?
Yeah, I think we can, at a minimum, right, kind of introduce the topic. I think this is something that we've briefly touched on before, I think, and certainly probably want to get a diversity of opinions on. So it might even become something of a question we ask other folks and things too. Yeah. But we might as well get our own opinions out there, get something started to get the idea floating around people's brains, and maybe then they'll want to bring their own opinions on about it.
For sure. Yeah. So this was a topic brought to us by a German listener, Eric Wachtel, sent me an email saying, asking if we might discuss this topic. So appreciate your input there and happy to talk about the topics that are sent in. I tend to sometimes forget. I was approached by a few people at the Carpet Fest, like, hey, sorry I haven't been in the or gotten back to you or whatever. So I guess I saw the topic a couple days ago, and so I'm like, yeah, let's do it this week, so I don't forget it. So forgive me if I've forgotten your topic, and don't hesitate to contact me again and say, hey, you didn't get my topic in there, and I want to come on the show. So just let me know. But thanks, Eric, and hopefully we do this justice. But I think, like Rob said, this would be a good topic to have people come back on. So this is we're going to be talking about herping, an area over and over again, or always looking for new spots to herp and experiencing different things. So I think there's great things on both sides. So we'll go ahead and flip the coin and see what side we take. So go ahead and call it, Rob.
I'll take tails.
Tails it is.
Tails it is. Okay. All
right. Coming in strong. What side would you like? Same spot or new areas?
I will take, I suppose it mostly represents what I do, so I will take new spots.
Okay. I was hoping, because you do like the research for new spots. So, yeah. And currently probably doing some research in that regard. So
absolutely.
Would you like to chuck me or go ahead and go first?
I love to play the chuck. So
okay, sounds good. Got to keep Chuck's memory here.
Absolutely.
I didn't realize he'd become a verb, but all right. So I think there is something to kind of herping, especially a spot that well, going back to kind of the same areas. Maybe, getting to different parts of that area might be kind of a way to mix it up a little bit, but there is a nice feeling about kind of getting back to a comfortable place. I think in many regards, it can make it enjoyable in different ways. I think one is if you've seen stuff there, or if you've seen most of the stuff in the area, it makes it easy to kind of have a list of maybe things you haven't seen. And so you can focus on certain species or times of year where you're going to have a better chance of seeing the species you haven't seen yet. But also the fact that there's less pressure to see things that you have seen before. And so seeing maybe repeat animals like that Gila monster comes to mind, old Key, that we've seen 3 or 4 times in 5 or 6 years, is just a really cool experience. And so if you go back to the same spots, you're going to have more chances of those repeat findings of the same animals, and just finding really cool specimens or really cool examples of the animals in the area. I think about that Oreo, cookies and cream, lutosis that we found out in that area where we found the Gila monster, and finding new animals, finding another Gila monster in the same day as the old Gila monster, or the different desert tortoises. I've kind of got a list of desert tortoise burrows that I can go check and remember, hey, there's a tortoise burrow right around here, and go see if somebody's home or near the entrance or something. So a lot of cool things to be done and seen in an area where you've been a lot. I'll start out that way.
I think that's totally fair, right? And even I had to give thought to which side. I think this is really something where there's utility to both things for sure.
Right.
I had to consider my choice, because I think there's something to be said for going to a place and then at least going back a second time. And part of it becomes, are we talking about a specific location, or is it, in the context that I'm mostly thinking of it, it's saying like, okay, do we go to Florida multiple times, Central Florida multiple times, or,
right.
Arizona, obviously now we've been quite a handful of times, West Texas, 3 times. And I think there's, when I'm thinking about it that way, it's a little bit different even than just sort of my local handful of spots that I might go to, right? There's kind of 2 different things. And, there is certainly utility. You learn so much from going the first time that you almost have to go at least twice to figure out, hey, okay, what did I lessons learned from the first time? What were the places, so many different thoughts simultaneously. I'll annotate some notes, and I guess I'll focus on my own side. But to me,
you are helping me quite a bit here. Yeah.
The coolest part of going to new spots, if we're talking about going to new states to find new things, the utility of the species checklist, the lifer list to try and go find new things, is getting us to areas that we otherwise might not go to.
Right.
And so, as you alluded to, a big part of the fun of herping to me is putting in the research to try and figure out where we should go. And that's sort of a double-edged sword. There's a component of it that helps both sides here, is that, the going to new spots, I get to put in a ton of research and try and figure out where do we want to go. The allure of going a second or third time is that validating what I've learned. You can only learn so much and have so much of an opinion from looking online, so that you need to kind of have boots on the ground to figure out, okay, does this make sense? And then, as we saw with the Northern Territory, that can change over time, right? So the things that made sense the first time and fit and gave us an approach didn't work the second time. At the same time, I think for me, the new spots is so there's a big allure, because like I didn't plan that much for our Northern Territory trip this time around, because you actually got kind of, despite it being a second time for you, you got a lot of the joy of researching into it, because we were going to spend a lot more time in an area, areas that you hadn't spent time before. So, honestly, there wasn't as much of a thrill of discovery beforehand for me, because, and I kind of said, run with it, see what you like, see what makes sense to you, because there are a lot of places that we can go, but simultaneously I had spent 9 or 10 months before we went the first time looking and thinking about all of it. So that I was pretty confident that you wouldn't have anything that I hadn't, that I didn't feel like I had either that we had been to or I had researched. And so it was more, hey, let's chat through whatever it is you find and figure out if that makes sense. And, but for me, I didn't have that same joy in the planning, because it was kind of like, okay, let's just sketch it out. This is what certainly we can do. Generally speaking, we'll be in this area and we can go kind of A, B, or C, depending on conditions or what makes sense or how we're feeling about it. But there wasn't that joy of discovery for me on that Northern Territory the second time. So I recognize the utility of it, but for me, half the fun is, I think, spending that time on the front end.
Doing the initial novel research.
Where can we go? What does this look like? Thinking through what are the specifics within that habitat that would make one area better than another. It's both. So it's kind of both things. It's not only what have other people, scoping other people's research. It's also the the ideation that comes from that. Okay, what are the critical factors that seem to be driving where they're being found, not just sort of trying to replicate someone else's result.
Yeah. And I think you kind of hit on this a little bit, but like kind of one of the pitfalls of going to the same area that you've been is you maybe take things for granted, like going into Cairns area, there was a great place to road cruise, and now it's closed down to motor vehicles, and you can only get in there with a cycle or a bicycle or something. So it's kind of, if you and I think too, part of that excitement of the research was that I hadn't been there for like a decade. So it was really cool to be able to think about, okay, what did I miss the first time? What do I not want to miss this time? What do I regret not doing the first time? What do I want to do more of this time around? So it was kind of cool from that point of view, is doing the research again after such a long pause, because it hadn't been as long between the two trips for you as it had been for me. So that was part of the excitement, and I think not in necessarily a competitive manner, but we both like to kind of plan and have some say in where we're going or what areas we're searching. And so that was fun to, the fact that you let me kind of do a little more of the planning that way, but just letting me have some of that input. And in retrospect, I'm like, okay, if we went back to that area, I'd have a different game plan this time around, at least for a certain species to try to find that. There's other places I might focus on or go more frequently than some of the other places that we've been, because of new revelations. And also part of the research was talking to locals or people who had been in the area, so they could kind of give you the heads up. Oh, this area is closed now. Don't try to spend much time there. So we didn't waste time like driving all the way out there at night and going, oh, it's closed. What do we do now? We had a plan for that, or have, and also where one place was on fire, it's not like you can plan for that, but we had plenty of B plans or other areas that we could search. And we did make it to that area anyway, just on a different night. So, there is some benefit of, despite pitfalls, you can still, the area well enough, like, okay, if we go here, it's going to take me, 2 hours to drive there or something like that. So I want to leave early enough to make it worthwhile and that kind of thing. But you're never going to have like a perfect, uneventful thing, I know, when Jordan went a month after we did to the Northern Territory up to Darwin area, and all the places we had gone were closed. I didn't realize that a lot of these places closed down seasonally. So when I went to Western Australia, I was going to go to the Bungle Bungles and, things like that, but it was closed for the season. I'm like, wait, they close a whole area of the whole, the Western Australia because it's too hot for people to go there. Like, I thought, Australia's hot anyway. Like, what's a couple more degrees? So not having that support, or even having like a gate blocking you can't go in at all to some of the areas. So I was kind of disappointed there. I didn't realize that was going to be an issue, and I probably, would have had a better B plan had I have known that things were closed down seasonally. And I kind of had an indication, but I thought, oh, there's no way they're going to just like shut down the whole road. But they shut down the whole road. So
they did. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, again, if I could go back to those areas, so I agree with you, like going back to the same area 2 or maybe 3 or 4 times even is probably very effective in getting you into areas. And I mean, it's hard to beat beginner luck when you find an Owen Pelly on your first trip, like you weren't planning to be there anyway. It's just kind of a random thing that happened that brought you to the area, and you happen to find an Owen Pelly while you're there. So, there's no way to really plan or get that done. You just have to put yourself in the right place and hope that you're there at the right time. And so, I think if I was going to do it a third time, it would be different than the first 2 times, so I think you can always learn and grow and improve. But sometimes once especially if you've been there multiple times, you know the area, you know where you're going to go, you know what places are best to look. And so it's not like you have to do a lot of forethought. You can just kind of go and play it by ear. Oh, the sun's out over here. It's not over here. So I'm going to go where the sun's out or where it's shady or whatever, you know, or, oh, it's hotter than normal. So maybe I'll go down to this area that has permanent water and, you know, spend more time there. So, you know, your options a lot better. You can chase the weather or even say, nah, it's not great for herping. Maybe I'll just go look for birds or look for something else. So once you know the area well enough, you can get enjoyment out of it regardless of the time of year or what's moving or what's not moving and have a good trip.
Absolutely. I mean, and a big part of that, I think, comes down to, have you had success finding the things that you have that have brought you to that area? And that could just be that it's really accessible and you just enjoy the habitat, and that's great, you know, but if there's a particular motivator or motivators, then that can make a difference for both your experience of it, obviously, and then how you feel about coming back to it. Mm-hmm. So as you talk about, right, in the context of the Owen Pelly, if you have beginner's luck and turn one up, you know, when you get an extra day, not that it was a new spot for us, but it was an unintended spot on that day or whatever, and you turn one up, then when we're having our second trip, obviously the levels of pressure that we're feeling, at least, you know, if we're talking Eric, Keith, and myself, relative to, you know, that you're feeling, I'm sure Teresa would have loved to seen one, but it wasn't the same level of motivator that you're feeling. You know, kind of,
you're not breaking rules, going on trails that are closed.
Our ability to just sort of be like, I'm just vibing, you know, as the kids say, and enjoying what's going on. I think that can then be a disconnect on those things. Obviously, if we go out with Jordan on any of this stuff, you know, if it's California, Texas, whatever it is, you know, you had mentioned there, well, he's the old pro, you know, goes all the time. We've talked about it. There's the joy of being able to show people new things to them, but it also, you know, sometimes it's fun when it's new for everyone, right? And there isn't, you don't have sort of the disconnect we had talked about on the first time that Eric and I went to Australia. We had gone with Chris Lemmy, awesome guy, you know, but he had just been there like a year before for most of the areas that we had been, and there was a disconnect in our experience, and maybe that's sort of the worst case scenario, right? It's not his old stomping grounds that he's super comfortable with, and kind of, I know all the best spots. It's not the expertise, but it's also kind of like, I've been there, done that. Not the newfound joy, that we're having. So
not the same level of excitement. Yeah,
exactly. You know, at the first water dragon or lace monitor or whatever it is, right? So I think there's some of that, right? It's kind of, is it, this is our second time being here and we saw the things or we didn't see the things, and how is that influencing how we feel about the spaces? Because sometimes the best places to turn things up aren't necessarily the ones that speak to our souls from a, you know, naturalistic perspective or the environment or whatever. It might be the cuts, right? And it's the cuts, and I've now been doing this for, you know, I've come out 3 times and spent X number of days looking, and it's just been looking at bare rocks and having semis rolling by. That doesn't feel as great as if, actually the pressure's off. We found this species the first time we came out. And so if we find one, awesome. You know, if we don't, that's okay too. And we're just kind of enjoying the moment. So our context definitely impacts how we feel if we're coming back. If it's new to everybody, then we're all in that same boat, and it just intrinsically is what it is, right? And we're kind of saying, well, we're having a good experience or not. Things are going crazy or they're not. And that sort of, I think, drives so much more of the experience when we're in that spot. But I
think too, like, I guess, you know, especially when you're herping to a list or herping to certain, you know, when you're trying to find certain things. So you're going to areas that you might not necessarily be your first choice, but like, I've got to find the species. So I'm going to go here and this is my best shot at finding the species. It may not be that enjoyable, or you might not be finding much at all, you know, that kind of thing. So sometimes that can be, you know, when you finally find that animal you're looking for, you're like, okay, I think I'm done here. You know, I don't need to come back to this area.
At least for a while.
Right.
It can be.
Exactly.
And maybe there's some of that in the West Texas things, at least in the way we've been looking, you know, and that you had alluded to saying, maybe you're changing your tune on it is, okay, actually having some success in that same type of habitat in a different place reinvigorates the spirit of the thing. It's not just so much, I've only had these sort of, non-fulfilling experiences with it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes those bad experiences are hard to erase from your memory, and you have to give it a few years before you go back to that same spot. But other times, it's like it brings back great memories. Every time I go to the Chiricahuas or the Huachucas, sure. Or, I'm just like, oh, this is like a second home. I could stay here forever, or like Kakadu, or, Central Australia. I'm just like, oh, I could walk these gorges for years, and not get sick of it. And, it's tiring in the moment, but, once you see that Brettles, then you're like, okay, I could do this forever, and I'd be okay with that, So I think it depends on what your goals are and what your experience is to some extent. But like, I don't know, and I think too, like when, I was going to go with you guys and you're saying, oh, we're going back to the Northern Territory. I'm like, oh, really? Why don't we go to somewhere else? Because I had a few negative experiences, not with the herping or with the people, but sure. not the people I was with, but the people that kind of screwed me over and, kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, at least in the Northern Territory and Darwin area. Fortunately, I had really good friends in Brisbane area, the Kuligowskis, that kind of said, hey, let's have your trip end on a good note. And they sure just made that a wonderful ending of a trip. And so I just, those guys are the best. I owe them a debt of gratitude forever, I think. So, and I think there are those places where it just feels like home. So you want to go back again and again and again. And, it's hard if it's across the ocean. It's a lot easier if it's, 15 miles up the road. I love going to that rubber boa spot and just, going up there. Even if I don't see anything, just kind of cruise along and enjoy the time with whoever wanted to come with me that night, or listen to some good music and just cruise the road. It just makes you feel good to get back to spots where you've frequented and you have those memories of finding good stuff and, or being with good people and all that kind of stuff. So I think it all factors in there. And when you have a stressful trip or a rough trip, sometimes it's kind of hard to say, okay, I want to go back there, because it kind of brings back those memories to some extent. And I can see why, people might avoid areas if they've had kind of bad experiences there. But
particularly if it's repetitive. Simultaneously, right? I think when I talk about, trying to discover new places or make a plan for new places, a lot of those places that we're going to find are probably the ones that are most well known, and maybe that when we get the chance to go, we actually discover places that are not the known places or are less well known. And so when you need that second trip to either follow up on those places that you only got a glimpse of, or you get kind of an additional information that you can use to then say, okay, actually I need to go back. And rather than, doing what I did on this one, or that first trip to Australia in 2018, right? We were based out of one place in the southeast suburbrs of Cairns, right? And we went all over the
driving
place,
a lot,
location.
Yeah.
Up, down, and east, or up, down, and west. Now, you can't go much east from there, but we were
on a boat, you can.
Right? Sea snakes or something, but some turtles. But we, with hindsight, it was, this area, actually, we could do better in this area. But logistically, it wasn't even the places that we went. It was logistically, I could have made this easier by, that's probably staying in two different places instead of one,
Yeah.
Does it make sense to be going out to Chiligo if you're staying southeast of Cairns, and to go down to Chile, or to Tully, and, is that what you want to be doing? Not Chile, it's what's the one that's down there? Mission. Is that what you want to be doing? Or is it, okay, if this is what we're trying to do, then this A needs to be longer. Our first trip, you would have found shockingly short. Still will. But, and that was a big part of it. Sometimes it's the places you go and, experience around that. And sometimes it's just logistics that you say, oh, I actually made a mistake, or the place we stayed wound up not being as good as it could have been. I was just saying that, so I don't know where exactly it had cut out, but when on that our first shockingly short trip, we just went to the extent we were up north. We were based out of that one place, and that wound up being more of a logistical mistake than it was an issue with going to, the wrong spots or even saying, hey, we need to do X, Y, or Z more. It was just saying our fundamental planning was off.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some places, like, I don't know, I was thinking about that in Texas too, like, where, we had stuff during the day, but then it's like you walk the cuts all night in areas like that. It's almost like just become nocturnal, sleep all day and go walk cuts at night, or, maybe get there, have crepuscular activity as well, but sleep during the heat of the day in a hotel room with AC, like that's kind of how I think I would play it in that hot time of year, just because it just doesn't cool down, until like 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And then if you're having to get up at, 9 or 10 to go do a hike or go somewhere else, and then it's hot, and it's just kind of you learn things, I guess, little tricks like that. But I do. And believe me, I've led many a death march on, a hike that people are like, why are we doing this again? Shouldn't we be resting I was up all night last night. Now I'm going to be up all night tonight. Plus I'm not getting
that's
rest
the hard part of it, right?
Right.
Especially
you want to see everything. On
the length of time that we're there, right?
Right.
It's hard to balance that dynamic of be maximizing your time. And so maybe that's part of a benefit to, as you say, a benefit to hitting a spot repetitively is you feel less pressure to fill all the time with something, right? It's kind of like once you've had those explorations and things, maybe you would be a little bit more willing to say, okay, let's actually, be calm during the day, and hey, we can still turn up cool stuff, right? Yeah. So when we were doing that our second time in Texas, right, we had gone out to Big Bend National Park, and that was a lot of our day hiking, and some of that, is you have some altitude to it, so it's not, necessary. You're not feeling it quite as badly as we are when we're in the lowlands state park, But what those the alligator lizards, right, on the trail, it's like, well, we wouldn't have seen those if we didn't do that, right? And that's
or the bear,
basically, exactly.
My first wild bear was there.
Experiences,
exactly.
So it's both things, and I think it comes into how long's the trip, right? If it's a shorter trip, then you have more capacity to just be kind of going 24/7. I'll sleep when I'm dead, sleep when I'm home, sleep when I'm dead, whatever it is. If we're going to be there 7 or 8 nights, then that's a long time to be going 24/7. And speaking frankly, I think we saw some of that in the Arizona, New Mexico thing. And that was sort of a lesson learned for me, was saying, okay, with the level of physical difficulty of the task, combined with, the way we were situated, staying out at the Desert Museum and stuff, that was, 60 to 75 minutes each way that we were coming back, which was great because the diversity of things that we were finding and being able to go to Bob's Party and all that. Obviously, there was a ton of great stuff, and it put us back into Chiricahuas and gave us the capacity to see things. And what we actually did see, that was great. I think if we had stayed down there, if we were camped out, that would be its own experience, right? We got our
with all the rain.
Dogs with Dustin and all that, and with some of those storms, we would have been in it, man. And that would be its own experience for sure.
Right.
So that, but it becomes, okay, if you're living that hard life, whether it's just going 24/7 or you're camping or whatever, then it's probably prudent, as you say, to say, okay, that's the actions of a short trip as opposed to
and I mean, this Texas trip for Carpet Fest was 5 days, which seemed not bad. I mean, we did cover a lot of ground, and so it was a lot of time driving, but at the same time we got some really good stuff. We saw some great stuff, and I don't know. I think
it was new, right? Some of that might have been a little, you were at least getting towards being repetitive of where we had gone on that second Texas trip, some of those areas, but that was probably basically all new. I very much doubt that we'd happened to hit into the exact kind of spots that you were doing.
Yeah. So the spots were new, but there was a lot. And I mean, Jordan admitted, like, he'd much rather herp west than east. He's like, it's miserable herping in the east, all the insects and bites and things like that. So he's like, Houston's kind of in an interesting area. It's kind of just right on the edge of where you start getting east and south and, the humid and insect and stuff like that. So I think he's kind of a desert rat, just like,
Sure.
I am and you are. And, we like the West is best. So, that might have shaped it a little bit. And the fact that Casey was headed that way, was a great opportunity to go herp with him as well. So, I think that was a great place to go. And, we found a lep. So that was icing on top.
It turned out.
Yeah. So, and I still want to see a lot of the things that are in West Texas, broad-banded copperhead. And I mean, a lot of the colubrids, kind of got skunked on. We've got haven't seen a lot of those. So I'd love to see a Baird's and a Suboc and all sorts of cool things out there.
Baird, Suboc, Alterna. Yeah. Plenty of.
Yeah. So I guess reasons to go back, but, and, I think that plays into it too. I mean, I guess if you're a great herper and you find everything on your first trip, you may not have that pressure of going back. And I do feel a little bit of that. Like I want to go back because I do want to see an Alterna in the wild. I would love to see that, and I think I'm kind of past that negative grumbling about just cricking my neck and walking the cuts all night. So, I think I can enjoy it these days. And, especially if you're learning about spiders or different invertebrates and things like that. So, and, the company you're with, of course, it was great with everybody,
Sure.
I think I tend to be kind of more of a loner when it's like time to like, oh, let's split up so we cover more ground kind of thing, rather than walking with people and chatting and stuff. So I could change my behavior and make those kind of things a lot more enjoyable, I think, for myself. But I think that drive to find something, it's like, well, if I'm walking the same place they are, I'm not going to see,
right.
Anything besides what they see. So it's like, I guess I need to relax a little bit there too. Cause
well, and I mean, I think part of it too, right, is a function of the nature of the task, right? So if it's something that where you think our chances are actually really objectively really good at turning something up, then maybe you kind of are engaging with it physically and emotionally in a certain way. Right. Whereas if realistically you can look at it and say, turning up an Alterna in West Texas is an uncommon thing, and for the most part, the people that have seen a lot of them have spent a lot of time looking. There are very few exceptions, right, where it's, okay, it turned out for him, Chris Painschab, the first cut he looks on, there's one, he went out with John Lasseter, who couldn't believe it because it took him years and years of going to find one. So the guy he goes with, it takes him to the spot. It took him years, and it takes him to the first cut, and there you go.
There are definitely people that have that experience out there that just know, like, okay, this day is going to be the day to find one. I'm going to have the best chances. So, and they live locally, so they can just drive, a couple hours and be there,
or whatever,
rather than be like, hey, in 6 months, how do you think this is going to be? So, there's definitely an advantage to herping local areas over and over. You're going to find a lot more of those Alterna than you are, than somebody who's coming in from some other state, based on when they could get off work and that kind of thing. So,
And I mean, if it's accessible like that, you can even be surprised at spots, right? So in the spring, we had the folks out for the zoo tag meetings, and had gone out to a local spot, and it didn't feel promising. It was 40 degrees and overcast, It's like, well, we're going to try to find hognose snakes and milks and whatever. And it was like, well, this is the day that works to do it. It wasn't a function. It certainly wasn't a function of this seems like the ideal day to do it. And, but sure enough, there was a milk snake that was sitting out, hanging out in the mid 40s, cloudy day, and well, there you go. So you got to see one of the prizes of the area, even on a day that wouldn't have seemed perfect. Certainly wouldn't have, absent them being there, I would not have gone out that day. So sometimes that repetition can have that as well. You can be surprised.
Yeah. And also, talking with Jordan, he was saying, well, we were kind of lucky to see that Lepidus where we did, because that's a popular area for Alterna as well. And so people will collect Leps because, they're there. And, they're looking for Alterna, but if they find a Lep, and they're really nice looking there, then they're going to grab that too, because they have their license and they can, that kind of thing. Sure. When we saw some of those groups that were just going through with buckets and containers and just collecting everything they could get their hands on, even if it looked just like the crap in their backyard, and you're just like, why? What are you doing? Oh, Jordan also said that Tantilla, the Hobart Smith eye, the little tiny one that I spotted on the kite, he said that's a rare find. You don't see Tantilla Hobart Smith there very often. So I'm like, oh, cool. And so I guess having an appreciation, for that kind of stuff, where it's like, oh, well, I thought all we saw was a Tantilla Hobart Smith. And he's like, no, that's a pretty good find. Like, oh, really? Okay. Well, I feel a little better about that now. So,
and I guess it justifies the 45 minutes or whatever it took me to get a half decent picture of it.
Right. So. Yeah. That thing was tiny and squirmy. But
under the water bottle under the
right.
cap.
Yeah, that's right. Fit in a little cap. So, I mean, I guess appreciating those kind of things can, you can have improved moments, I guess, if you have that understanding. And if you're going to a spot over and over, you're probably going to be more likely to have those insights or, hey, I've never seen this here. Or, sometimes we get lucky, like the spotted leaf nose snakes, where I saw 30 of them and I'm like, just another spotted leaf nose. And then you go back and you don't see any and you're like, where did they all go? They were out in full force when I was here last time, Why am I not seeing them now? And some of those seasonal things where you have to go at a certain time of year, you're not going to see them. So, that's kind of a neat thing too, that you may not appreciate if you don't go to an area multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think there's, pros and cons to each for the most part. Right. If I'm not going back to a place, it's probably because it is the external factors, as you mentioned, more so than there hasn't been an area yet that we've gone to where it's like, oh, I don't have an intrinsic interest in coming back here. It'll be driven by other experiences or just, and not even to say that I won't go back, but it'll be pushed down the list. Right. But to me, that appeal of the new and the joy of spending months ideating around it, researching into it, just the drive to do that. And there's something to it being a new place, not even just sort of ideating around. I mean, heck, I've seen it with the Northern Pines, that was kind of fit into both boxes, where it's a repetitive place, but it was kind of finding new locations, spots. some new spots, some old spots, and eventually it turned out, and it wasn't that we were wrong any of those times. It was just saying like, with something like a ghost of the pine forest, you can make choices to try and improve your odds. You're trying all these different spaces. I do think, as we talked about with Bob Zappalordi, that sometimes and maybe it's like what you're describing with the Leps, the collection spot and whatever, that like we've had great times going to the Caulfield pine barren spots. Right. And seen some animals there, but that's not where we saw a pine snake, and it is kind of, I think there's something to having that additional research and knowledge and insight from having gone multiple times to say, okay, let's not focus on, the places there, Crossley, Pines and Corns, that literally have been written about for 70 years. And lots of people have picked up that book and gone to Crossley to look for pine snakes and corn snakes. And we have spent a lot of time there in great habitat and not seen pine snakes or corn snakes.
Yeah. But I think even according to Carl himself,
they weren't common. Yeah,
they were common then either. It was hard to find them then too. So even more so. And I think too, you wonder if like if they're protected or if there's a heavy presence of fish and wildlife, like in southeastern or southern Arizona, where, they're keeping an eye out, and, you don't pick up a price eye and shout, I found one, because you'll get a ticket for, several $1,000s. So it's not, I think a lot of those things play into it. And, if you don't want to be hassled by law enforcement, maybe you skip those areas, or if like there's a conference, and so there's 50 million herpers in town, and you don't want to go to that spot that you've been before because it's going to be crowded and there's going to be people, out on the road. And, maybe it's cool because there's a lot of cool herpers and you could meet a lot of neat people. And so, it's a double-edged sword, I guess. And maybe they're stopped on the side of the road and they have a really cool animal in their headlights and you can get out and check it out too and take some photos. But, it kind of takes away the like, oh, I found that, as somebody else found it. And I just happened along and to see it. So can't count it on my list or whatever. So, there's a lot of things to consider. And, I don't know if we're going to get through all of them tonight and we're going.
No, absolutely not. And when you mentioned it to me, I think there are so many diverse opinions on this, right? As I say, I think I picked the bucket that does agree with sort of my temperament for the most part. But even then, I wholeheartedly acknowledge the pros of going multiple times. And for the most part, it's been, I want to go to new places and then I want to go to those places again. It's a prioritization of them as opposed to saying, nope, never again. Right. Even at the worst case, it's, give me a year or two to sort of recharge my batteries on that idea. And then, I'm excited for it again.
Sometimes having low expectations or not a ton of research into an area sometimes makes you, I think sometimes, at least within my own brain, I think, okay, I put in all this work to, really research the heck out of this place. Yeah. And it's gonna just, I'm just going to knock it out of the park because there's not much more I could know about this area. And then you go there and you get skunked. You're like, oh, well, what happened? What did I do wrong? And not necessarily you did anything wrong, but sometimes like not having put all that effort into it, like, Florida, for example, when I went there, we were just going to stop through a couple days early. We were going on a cruise with my family. And so it was like, and I wasn't thinking July was going to be some great time to find a bunch of stuff down there. It was hot and, kind of like, and so we just planned to go down the Keys and, and Heidi we were going to herp for one night. And so I'm like, yeah, let's go for it. And ended up being great and find a lot of stuff. And I'd listened to a few podcasts where they're just, oh man, you got to have a gun and you got to make sure nobody, people were following us and cutting us off. And I'm thinking, man, what is wrong with Florida? I don't want to herp in Florida.
I mean, I think there's something to that.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. And maybe the area we were in is, less prone to have those kind of issues, but there were other herpers out there and they were friendly and would show us stuff. Sure. And it was kind of a good time. So I was really delighted by my experience in Florida. It was really fun. Maybe just the fact that I was with my wife and we had a nice time and saw a lot of cool snakes. The bugs were ridiculous, but other than that, it was about as perfect as you could get. I mean, of course, we missed out on an Eastern Diamondback, which would have put the cherry on top for sure, but it was really fun to just get out there and see a bunch of stuff without a ton of planning. I mean, I knew kind of the general areas to go and check out, and we happened upon some really cool stuff like the mother crocodile and all her babies. Like, we didn't spot the crocodile. Somebody else was already looking at it when we got there, but we did spot all the babies, and that was kind of cool. I'm like, what is she doing? It looks like she's picking something up. And I zoom in with the camera. I'm like, she has babies. There's babies all over here. It's a really cool experience. So, and I think too, like, I feel bad for the people who are chained down to a collection. You hear people talking about like, oh, I just have too many animals. I can't leave them. I can't go on trips. And I'm thinking, man, you got to find a way to make that happen. Go to Australia because it's during the winter. You're cooling stuff down. Do you really have to be there for, 10 days or else your collection's going to go to pot, like, free yourself up, get out there, see them in the wild. It's just so rewarding and just so fantastic. I just love the idea of another herp trip, or prospective herp trip and doing the research and getting excited about going out it's hard to beat. Even when you're like, I mean, the Texas Carpet Fest, not the best time to herp Texas, like I was very shocked because on the day I left, it was like 90 degrees in the day. I'm thinking, how are there not snakes out everywhere? 90 degrees during the day and cools down at night. Like, that would be perfect in California or Arizona, But in Houston, it's like, oh, it's too cold at night. We can't dare to go out. It's like, wow, it's crazy. And it was kind of funny too, because when we found that cottonmouth, Jordan was just saying like, oh yeah, you don't really see cottonmouths. I don't see cottonmouths at this time of year. And then we see a cottonmouth and he's like, well, I guess I need to rethink that. Maybe I do, maybe I'm just not out looking or mowing the lawn as often or things like that, like, cause you don't see as many. So why go out and, spend all that time out getting bit by insects when it's not. Yeah. So I think there are some things to like doing things out of season and, getting different results than you're maybe used to, or finding different species. Like, the indigos out in the cooler weather, they're one of the few animals that can do that, I guess, out there. So yeah, it's kind of fun. And I guess that's the other big benefit of living in an area and going back to the same spot multiple times. You can go in off times and go in times when people say, oh, you're not going to find anything. They were on NPR talking about, they went out at, it was 50 degrees at night and they found an alterna. He's like, you don't find the things you're not looking for. And everybody else was sitting, sipping hot cocoa in the, in the lodge or whatever, instead of out herping. So, even if it's not perfect weather, you're there, go look, why not? So, yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I was listening to Eric and Owen talk with Stephen Katz and great episode, by the way. Good job, guys. Really enjoyable to listen to, but thinking about how Eric was talking about the love of the hunt for a new project or getting a new snake and things like that. And I really think I've replaced that with herping. Like there's still a few projects that I would love to get into and, and maybe down the road I will. But like right now I'm thinking, when can I get out herping again? Not when can I get a new snake or I need to find a new project, because it's kind of taken that place of that, where you have that excitement of finding something new, of seeing a new species in the wild that you've never seen before, and experiencing that. And it just really, I think it takes the place of that hunt for the next project. So I don't know, if you're feeling like you're overwhelmed with your collection, slim it down a little bit, get out herping, because it'll fill that hole, fill that void in you that can only be filled with reptiles in some way or another.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I obviously completely agree, definitely in that same mindset and mentality and I think part of that maybe is a reflection of and I frame it at least relative to myself. And I know this is true for some folks as well. Not to say it's a universal truth. So to imply a negativity if it's not the way folks are doing it, but it's a maturity to, the maturity of valuing experiences rather than things. And that both reflects in the trip itself, in the context of the folks that you're out there with, the memories that you're making, shared experiences that you're having when you're doing that, and the things that you find out, but I completely agree, right? The hunt, the thing is, rather than being something to try and, quote own, to have that relationship with. Instead, it's not a thing that you can try and contain. It's instead the idea of going and living that experience in that moment. And I do think, we've heard lots of people say that, and it's one of those things that if it speaks to you, then it will when it does. I don't know that you can import it as you can't pitch. You can pitch it to someone else. You can't make them buy it. But if they come to have that feeling, then, it's pretty great. Yeah, for sure.
Well, and as Rob said, we didn't even scratch the surface probably on some of these things. So if you've been yelling at your phone trying to get us to listen, come on and bring some of your ideas and your thought processes on this topic, and love to have different perspectives on it. So yeah, well, good times. Anything cool lately you've seen in herpetoculture or herpetology?
Yeah, a handful of things actually. So was listening to So Much Pingle, as I always do, and he had on a guest who has had a reptile podcast and has recently restarted it. So this is the Wood-Fired Herping podcast. Worth going. There's about 8 to 10 episodes for back in 2022, and then has put out 2 episodes now with Marissa and Bob Hansen. So he's in California, and so talked to a couple California academic, certainly, folks who put out papers and things. Being the completist that I am, I started back with the 22 stuff. It's still there in the catalog, which is good. Working through that, but so the host, it was a co-hosted show originally, and now the host is just the one of them. But he was a chef, or is a chef in the Southern California area, so a lot of it is Southern California stuff, but also talking about going afield. There is campfire meals, sort of, particularly it seems like in the original iteration, but listen to him on So Much Pingle, and then check that out. I found that to be very cool, and definitely hours of content to get caught up.
Right. His name is Zeev?
Yeah.
Ginsburg?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I just put that as a favorite. So yeah. He needs a logo, at least on this podcast app I'm using, because it's just the no logo. So,
yeah. There's pictures on him on the one that I see. So maybe it isn't coming through yet or whatever. Yeah. I recorded over the weekend with Adam for The Expert and the Idiot.
Oh, cool.
Was good.
Yeah.
That was fun. Talked about very.
Have you not been on there?
I had not.
Oh, I thought you'd been on there. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
So that was good. Talked some Omaha pythons, boas, and then mostly, for the most part, it's herping stuff. I think he's, ideating around getting to Australian stuff, which is very exciting. So hopefully tried to give some useful kind of logistic ideas and things like that. I think that was a lot of what he was hoping to get. And then I know he's given you some ideas that we have in the hopper and things. We'll have to have him back on. And then he expressed an interest in having us on there together. So maybe we'll make that work at some point.
Yeah, crossover show.
Yeah, exactly. Not quite a clip show, but in the same vein. Right. Although I did say, I do think the different hosts bring something different. So even, as I was on there with them, I felt like there was stuff I was talking about that I have. Certainly, there's stuff that I've talked about before. We all have our greatest hits or whatever, but there was plenty of stuff that I felt like, because of the questions he was asking or the things he was interested in, there was new content that I don't feel like I've talked about either as plainly or, at all, or as plainly as in that context. Cool. So hopefully utility. Other things I'm excited about, Lucas's adventure.
Yeah.
Presumably it'll be a Carpets and Coffee when he comes back to give his grand tour, but I'm excited. That's certainly exciting, He's turning up some good stuff. I'm excited for him, and I'll be excited to hear about it. And then the last one actually fits in with the Texas Carpet Fest theme. Ari is putting out a podcast on
Boland's Python Roundtable kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily limited to that. It seems like I was a little confused maybe by the title of the podcast, to be honest. Because with previous episodes that I'd listened to or whatever, and I get where he's coming from, but I didn't, not quick on the uptake. So, but he just had Stan Shiras on, and we just had started listening to it, and I had to have a chuckle when he introduced Stan. He said, "Oh, and I'm sure you haven't been on a podcast before." And we, Eric, Owen, and myself had talked to him on NPR 3.5, 4 years ago or something like that. And so Stan had the great line of saying, "Well, I haven't done a video podcast. This is new."
My first video podcast.
Yeah, so that was funny. He didn't specifically mention that it was with us or a handful of years ago or whatever, but it was a funny line of just like, Have you? I bet you haven't done one of these. And well, I haven't done exactly this. It brought me joy, and I'll be excited to listen to it. And I'm sure the context, as I say, different hosts, different topics, all those things. And I'm sure Stan will talk about a lot that he didn't talk about with us. So it'll be great.
Yeah. I listened to his episode with Frederick, and I'm almost done with the one with Stan. And yeah, great conversations, great stories. Stan's got some really cool stories and innovations I hadn't thought about. Talks about a basking platform that is pressure sensitive, hits a switch and turns on the basking light. So like the Bolins would know if they went up there, it would turn on the light and they could leave when they were hot enough. It was kind of an interesting concept that I'd never really thought about. That's kind of a fun way to do it. Yeah, good times. Yeah, some good content out there. I got the 7th edition of the Complete Guide to Reptiles of Australia, the Wilson and Swan book. Yeah, pretty cool. I mean, trying to spot the new species added, they don't make it easy. It's like,
right. They don't highlight them as particularly. Yeah.
I think I counted up like Tympanocryptus species, the earless lizards, and there were like 3 additional species in that genus in the new edition versus the old edition. But sadly, they've included the children's or Stimson's pythons in with children's now, but they do show a Western Stimson's and they say, here's a children's python from Western Australia, that kind of thing. So it's like, and then I was looking at one, speaking of Tympanocryptus, I was looking at one of the species, Fictilis, and I was looking on INAT thinking, I thought there was more pictures of these. Like I ran across this picture of it's called the Harlequin earless dragon, Tympanocryptus Fictilis. And I saw this photo. It was just absolutely gorgeous, like these white and red and black striping, down the back, and just a beautiful lizard. And then I was looking in the guide and I was looking online. I'm like, oh, they're cool looking, but they're not as vivid as I remember. And then I'm like, oh, it was on Flickr. So if you get a chance, go on Flickr and look up the Harlequin earless dragon. It's a really nice photos of some of them that somebody's found. But I'm not sure why they didn't upload their observations to INAT, but it's kind of cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had a fleeting thought. Oh, no. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. But Jordan kind of, we were talking about INAT a bit as well, and kind of that idea of INAT is your kind of your observations. So if you were with a group, everybody had their own observations. So you're supposed to put on 5 observations of the same animal. That's what it's for. And so, because each of you saw it, each of you experienced it, not just, so that was kind of an interesting addition to our previous conversation around iNaturalist. And so I've been logging in, all the stuff and it's kind of a nice way to keep a life list to some extent, because you can go back and search for different species and see where you've seen them and things like that. So, and it also helps, if you're going to the same area over and over, it helps, them get the idea of what's going on in that area over time, for somebody who finds the stuff well or goes out there frequently. So it's very helpful in that regard. So I don't know, just kind of a different take on it. And maybe we'll have Jordan on here. He can defend INAT a little better. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I remember, and it is an INAT related comment. I was, one of Wolfgang's INAT listings showed an Apodora, amazing,
oh, cool.
Amazing record or whatever. Yeah. And, but within the, kind of in the vein of the children's python, it was fascinating. So I clicked on the link and, it opened up and it's calling Apodora the Irian python.
Irian python.
So,
okay, like Irian Jaya, not like Irian like
python, which was an entire. I don't know if that was a taxonomic switch in terms of what the nomenclature that INAT is using. I don't know that I'd looked up what I would call a Papuan python previously, but it was a little bit jarring when I pulled up that record, just seeing that Irian python. It struck me.
I'd never heard him referred to that. Yeah. And I guess, it's fine, whatever. But, common names are that way, but, seems like they kind of try to get a consensus common name to some extent, but Irian, that's a little outdated, but, and that was fun to hear Eric and Owen talk to Steven about, IJ versus Papuan. And a lot of times people just say Papuan python when they're talking about a Papuan carpet python. So I made the suggestion, just call them New Guinea carpet pythons. I mean, it's the island's New Guinea. Like, why not? They're not found elsewhere. So, then you avoid all the confusion, because there's already a Papuan carpet or Papuan python. So,
well, there was, I guess now they're,
now they're Irian pythons. They're going back to Irian, making IJs very attractive, to use that again.
Indeed.
Yeah. I know Nick.
Now they're just eye carpets. They're Irian carpets.
Irian carpets. Nick lobbied hard to get them called Papuan carpets.
What would the power lifter himself have to say about this?
Right.
I didn't think he would like it.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be upset. But good stuff. What else? I think there was I got a couple like cheap guidebooks, the reptiles and amphibians of Hawaii. That was kind of interesting, because I think all of them are invasive, except the sea turtles and the sea snakes. So, but that was kind of cool. And then reptiles of Madera Canyon and like the county or something like that. So that's kind of fun too. But they were like $5 on Amazon. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll get that.
Check it out.
Yeah. If I go back to Hawaii some point, I can have a little better idea of where things are and where to look for
where
them.
they came from.
Yeah. Who put them there?
That's interesting.
So, I guess it's about that time. Wrap it up, and it's good chatting with you, and good to hear what's going on, and fun to talk about this topic. But thanks again for listening, and thanks to Eric and Owen for hosting us, and we'll say have a good one, and we'll catch you next time for Reptile Fight Club.